Greetings, neighbors. This is Reflections, a show sponsored by the Paducah Cooperative Ministry where we, all of us together, do God's work with human hands. My name's Gregory Waldrop, and I'm the pastor at Fountain Avenue United Methodist Church, and I'm one of your co-hosts. Our other co-host is Karen Winkel from the United Church of Paducah. Welcome, Karen.
Good to see you, Gregory. Good that you're joining us today. We're excited to have Libby Wade, who's the rector at Grace Episcopal Church here in Paducah. She's our guest to talk about ministry and life at Grace, and also here to share with us a little bit of her own story. So I think officially you're Reverend Elizabeth.
The Reverend Elizabeth T. Wade.
T. Wade. I knew there was an initial in there. Anyway, good to have you with us, Libby. And
thank you.
And we're just so excited to have you here. You started ministry in Paducah about the same time that I did, so I kind of feel like we're of the, we're like the incoming class of 2005. And your ministry's been very active and rich in those short number of years.
It's hard to believe it's been 4 years almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think I arrived on Palm Sunday of 2005, and you'd been here about a month at that point, and it was nice to have someone to welcome me.
So you came with many rich experiences from somewhere else. Where was the somewhere else?
Many different places, but immediately from Louisville, and I'd been pastor of an inner city, predominantly African-American congregation there, and had worked on the cathedral staff before that, and in a suburban church as children's minister and assistant organist. So, and before Kentucky, I'd been in Georgia and Mississippi and Texas and North Dakota and Alabama. Not all as priest, but always working in the church in one way or another.
Wow.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It started in Alabama, is that right?
Started in South Alabama, in a little Southern Baptist church.
Or L.A., isn't that what they call it down there?
Absolutely.
Lower Alabama?
Yeah.
Good.
And in a Southern Baptist church.
In a Southern Baptist church, yes.
Very interesting. Yeah.
And I found the Episcopal Church by way of the Methodist Church, because I went to Huntington College in Montgomery, which is a Methodist college, and I still remember the wonder of hearing "A Mighty Fortress is Our God" for the very first time in my life, and discovering something about liturgical seasons and participating in that worship, and then moving from there towards the Episcopal Church through a number of different avenues.
And this is a second vocation?
It is a second vocation in some ways. I like to think of it as just an extension of the vocation that I've always had as a lay minister in the church. Like I began playing the piano and the organ in that little Baptist church in South Alabama when I was 13. And I saw that even then as a ministry and a piece of ministry. And so it's just been unfolding and developing through the years, and I'm ordained, but I'm still living out my baptismal promises.
So. Beautiful, beautiful. And I'm remembering, I'm just thinking how ecumenical you are in your story, because I think you went to a Presbyterian seminary.
I did. Yeah. Presbyterian Seminary for 2 years in Louisville, and then transferred to General Seminary, which is an Episcopal seminary in New York City, which was another piece of the journey I left out a bit ago. So New York was the most different from any experience I'd ever had, and that entered into how I chose that particular seminary to finish the degree. The city was an amazing experience, and the seminary was a good place to be too.
And you did this all while raising a family and partnering with a husband who had his own work. And
absolutely. At that point, my husband was a chemical engineer at a corporation in Louisville. And the year I began seminary, my oldest son started college. And the year I ended seminary, I graduated from seminary 1 week, and my younger son graduated from high school the next week. So we took a journey of education together in some ways. And my older son actually lived with me. He dropped out of college for a semester and lived with me in New York on the seminary campus, and then discovered that living with your mother at 21 on a seminary campus is not the most wonderful thing to do, and found his way back into college.
That might have been like a little sneaky trick that God had.
Really.
I think so.
Exactly.
God is always full of surprises.
Well, how does that rich background, that ecumenical background, inform your life as a priest?
Yeah, it's even richer than I might have shown you already, because in that little town where I grew up, it was such a small town that there were 5 churches actually. There was an Episcopal church, a Baptist church, Methodist, and a Christian church, and Presbyterian. And each of them had services one Sunday a month. And so some people, each of them had their own Sunday school. So you went to your own denominational Sunday school and then moved around through the week. So it was through the month. So it was, I grew up with that kind of ecumenical, very Protestant, thoroughly Protestant, but very ecumenical experience. And youth group was always shared, and vacation Bible school in the summer was always shared. So it's just part of how I think about things and think about being a Christian in the world today. In Louisville, where there are a number of Episcopal churches, our work outside my own congregation tended to be with other Episcopalians. Here, we're the only Episcopal church in McCracken County, and so to do cooperative ministry obviously means working with our brothers and sisters in other denominations. And for me, that's been one of just wonderful joy of being here, and the work we do together through Paducah Cooperative Ministries. I think about the Faith in Film group that we started as both of your congregations participating with a couple of others last year that I hope will continue in the next year. And First Presbyterian and Broadway Methodist and Fountain Avenue Methodist and Grace have done vacation Bible schools together. And we're getting ready to begin a reading camp, which is a new venture for Grace. It's something that was begun by the Diocese of Lexington about 6 years ago, and working with 3rd and 4th graders who are behind in their reading skills. And they've been so successful with their summer reading camps that they decided to expand. They did one last year in Johannesburg, South Africa, and then approached us with the opportunity to bring it to our diocese. So Grace Church is going to host the first reading camp in our Diocese of Kentucky this summer, the last week of July, and First Presbyterian is partnering with us in this first venture, and we hope that it will be so successful and help kids here so much that we can expand to more weeks and more ecumenical participation in that venture.
Marvelous, marvelous.
Well, I'm have been intrigued by at Grace about all the different things that are going on there, and all the fullness of ministry there. Tell us a little bit about Grace as well. What are the other things that are happening there?
Well, Grace is a very active and busy congregation, and the building is such a gift. It's a beautiful building. The oldest part of it dates from the 1870s. It's been wonderfully maintained through the years, and one of the gifts that Grace offers to the Paducah community is the use of the building by nonprofit organizations. And so it's not unusual at all on, say, a Monday night or a Tuesday night for there to be 5 or 6 groups meeting in various parts of the building. Some might be a study group from Grace Church or a committee of Grace Church, or a Habitat meeting, or the symphony chorus practices there every Sunday afternoon. Just organization after organization who use the building. The Narcotics Anonymous meets almost every night at Grace Church, and there's an Overeaters Anonymous chapter that meets 3 days a week at Grace during the daytime too. So, and in addition to that, we've got the full round of worship services, 3 on Sunday. Each have their own distinctive nature. The morning services are more traditional Episcopal worship with beautiful music and in a lovely surrounding building. And the evening worship service at 5 o'clock is has a more Celtic feel to it and includes communion, but a lot of silence, no sermon. It's brief, half an hour, and some singing of chants just with guitar accompaniment. So it's a contemplative, quiet, wonderful way to end a Sunday and begin the week in peace, I think. We offer a wide variety of Christian formation opportunities for all ages too. And one of the things I'm most proud of in the 4 years that I've been at Grace Church is that the first year I was here, we started an Education for Ministry group, which is aimed at teaching lay people in more depth some of the same things that we learned in the first year or so of seminary regarding Scripture and tradition, the history of our Christian faith, and also a process of theological reflection. And we began that the first year I was here, and now have 2 groups, and we had our first graduate last spring, someone who had started it in another place and picked it up again, and we'll probably have 6 or 7 graduates this year. But that's, at the moment, that's all Episcopalians, but it's a group and a process out of our seminary in Swanee, Tennessee, that is certainly, in many places, has ecumenical participation, and I would love to see that grow as well, and other people be part of it.
I did the first year with an Episcopal congregation when I was in Utah, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it, and I loved watching folks grow.
Yeah. And people who do the whole process stay together in a small group atmosphere for 4 years. So you really build that sense of being fellow pilgrims on the way, and being able to ask each other questions in depth and help each other develop that sense of ministry and call that grows out of our baptismal promises.
And then do you lead that, or is it led by DVD, or what's the?
Swanee provides the materials, which are written and on, they just added in the last year CDs that contain all the written materials. And each group has mentors who are trained by Swanee. You have to train with Swanee at least once every 18 months continually. You don't do it once and then forever are ready. I co-mentor one of the groups, and 3 lay people from Grace who have been in the program have become mentors. So each group has 2 co-mentors at this point.
Great.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well, supporting the laity in developing depth, I think, is so important. And I remember, I mean, it was very engaging for me, even though I'd already finished seminary. And what I appreciated about it was that while it was challenging, I didn't feel that there was pressure.
Right.
That it was engaging folks and stretching them, but that it was it included a liberation that isn't present in the classroom.
Exactly. There are no tests, no exams, no papers to write, and suggestions for ways you can go into the material in more depth, but you really get out of it what you choose to get out of it, I think.
Well, what other exciting things are happening at Grace?
Well, I mentioned Faith in Film a moment ago, which each of your congregations participated in doing over the last year, with Maiden Alley Cinema and Paducah Cooperative Ministries as the other partners in that venture. We also at Grace, Matt Yeager, who's our parish administrator and just an extraordinary educator himself and creative person, has put together a couple of other series that are sort of in that vein. And one of them is called Faith in Fiction, which looks at short stories and from a faith perspective, and has used a variety of resources. They spent one series of those sessions on Flannery O'Connor's short stories, and another on just a general group of short stories from an anthology. And the last 2 series of that have been from books called God, Faith, I think. I don't remember the exact title, but we're in the middle of one of those right now, just beginning again after the Christmas break. And it's on Sunday mornings, and just a wonderful way of thinking about our faith and Scripture, making connections from a different perspective. He's also designed a series called Guest Starring God, which uses video clips from TV shows in a number of different genres, and then asks faith questions around those. And they're not the obvious God TV shows. It's not Touched by an Angel or the ones that you know you're going to see God in. but just ordinary shows, from drama, from sitcoms, from crime shows, where God makes some sort of appearance. And I've gotten to watch one of those and really enjoyed it. And we're going to offer that on Wednesday evenings during Lent this year, and hopefully we'll offer that to the community as well. We're getting ready to host our diocesan convention at the end of February at Grace Church, and it's the first time, I think, in about 16 years that Grace has hosted convention. And we're looking forward to having all the clergy of our diocese and lay representatives from each congregation in the diocese, probably about 200 people, at Grace from Friday afternoon through Saturday to do the business of the diocese, but also we'll begin with an evensong, which is one of our favorite services at Grace Church. Our choir really loves doing it. And that service on Friday, February 27th at 5 o'clock will be open to the community, and we hope a lot of people will come. The preacher for that service is our own bishop, Ted Gulick, who is retiring in the next year, so this will probably be his last time to do something like that here. Then Saturday morning there's an opening Eucharist at 9:45 that again will be open to the public, and the guest preacher for that service is the Right Reverend Sean Rowe, who is in his early 30s, and when he was elected a bishop a year or two ago, he was the youngest bishop in the Episcopal Church. So Bishop Gulick is retiring at 61, and Sean Rowe is here, will be with us in his mid-30s, and the theme for the convention is generation to generation. So they'll be doing some dialogue around what it's like to view the church and the world from more senior eyes and more junior eyes, and then we'll also be offering some workshops that are focused around that theme of generation to generation, and work that we're doing at Grace Church with young adult ministry, and then hopefully some senior adult kinds of things too, and everything in between.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you mentioned the young adult ministry, I've been a guest several times at Pub Theology Wednesday nights at Jeremiah's, and I kind of like, you know, it's a little bit naughty, I think, for church people to meet in that sort of location. They're not naughty when they gather, but I kind of like that. But that's a very lively and lovely group, and I think it's you know, when I went the first time, I was talking about my experience with the Navajo, and that group was so attentive and asked such good questions, and I was so enlivened by that experience. I thought, I'm not in their demographic, but I'd love to come back. And I didn't say anything about that, and they said, come back. And I said, well, I'm not in my 20s or 30s. They said, oh, that's okay, you come. And I've noticed, because I've gone several times now, that really is a group that does attract folks that aren't really quite in that age group, but are really looking for lively, fresh consideration of some important,
wholesome interactions.
And where no question is out of bounds. You can,
exactly, and that there are people who gather around the table who have extremely different perspectives, and they're able to share points of view in a way that's very respectful. I think that, you know, not only does that benefit the folks that are taking part that day, but anybody that happens upon that, I think, starts to get an idea of what it means to be a person of faith that they might not get any other place.
And that group has not only been ecumenical, but interfaith as well. I know it's included people from a number of different faith traditions, and some from no faith tradition who are curious. And that's really been a growing edge for Grace Church, and one of the ways we've partnered with our diocese to be able to have Ellen Ekevog as our assistant rector part-time, and she has been the person who has nurtured and helped that group to grow. They're not meeting in January, but they begin again in the first Wednesday in February at Jeremiah's at, I believe it's 7 o'clock.
Great. Well, I'm interested in your experiences, particularly as a woman in ministry in the Episcopal Church. I was you know, when I was in seminary, the first women were being ordained in the American church. I know the sort of tumult in the British church about it as well, the Anglican church. And it's such an important work, and I'm wondering what your experience has been as you've...
It has been mostly good, sometimes hilariously funny, as when the time that a search committee felt the need to ask me if I knew what to do if a toilet was clogged. And yeah, I pointed out that that's what plumbers are for, and I knew how to use the telephone directory, and I generally know where the cutoff valve for water is in whatever church I'm serving. But that's the kind of question that I suspect they would not have asked a male candidate for priest or rector. Yeah, certainly, I did not go to seminary until 1995. By then, the Episcopal Church had been ordaining women for almost 20 years, and several other denominations for quite a long time before that. So I didn't encounter many of the things that the first and second generation of women clergy encountered, I think. You know, we were, in my seminary class, half of us were women, both at the Presbyterian Seminary and the Episcopal Seminary. And when I came back from seminary as priest in the Diocese of Kentucky, there were very few of us as women. That number has grown every year, and now I think it's almost 40% of the clergy, active clergy in the Diocese of Kentucky are women. So it's, yeah, my initial going to clergy events were a little bit strange in that I was definitely a minority in the room. You maybe 2 or 3 other women there, and then a sea of male clergy. But I never sensed any lack of welcome from them. And I found Paducah to be very receptive as well. Grace Church had had an ordained woman as deacon, but never priest. So I'm the first priest at Grace Church as a woman. And they really have been very, by and large, very receptive and nurturing of my ministry.
Well, and I think, you know, I'm extra proud of Grace. I mean, when you know, when a church calls a woman for the first time, you know, it's reason to celebrate. But there are 2 women.
There are 2 of us,
and that is, I think, extra special.
Yes. And the deacon that I spoke of a moment ago, Ann Revel, who had been here for a number of years before me, and then retired to Wisconsin, has recently come back. So while she is retired and not active up front in ministry, there are 3 ordained women at Grace Church right now. And yeah, there are Sundays when we sort of look around and notice that the clergy, the acolytes, the lay readers are all women, none of which would have been the case 40 years ago or 30 years ago, probably. And we just kind of laugh about it because we know there'll be men there the next week. Yeah, and I have lay men who are lay preachers as well. So there is a male voice in the pulpit occasionally. Right. But one of the things we laugh about at Grace occasionally, our men's group loves to cook breakfast, and they're probably one of the best breakfasts you could find in Paducah is at Grace Church one Sunday morning a month. And so someone once said, you know, at Grace Church, we've turned the tables around, and men are in the kitchen and women are in the pulpit. And of course, that's an overstatement because we swap back and forth in many ways, but it does speak to the church's ability to change and grow and experience the wideness of God's grace and the surprises that we talked about earlier, that God sets out in front of us all the time.
Tell us, family-wise, a little bit about you in terms of your grown-up family and now also your family that's here with you.
Well, the family that's here with me is my husband, who after 6 months of driving back and forth between his job in Louisville and Paducah on the weekends said, enough of that, retired early and moved here and has loved retirement. He's discovered, he is one of the EFM co-mentors now, and has his own sense of ministry and caring for people in the congregation, and doing some teaching on Sundays, and just loving life without having to get up and go to work at 7 o'clock every morning. Our sons are adults and married and live in the Northeast. One is a church musician with St. Anthony Shrine in downtown Boston, and then teaches classical guitar the rest of the week. And his wife is an editor with one of the Boston newspapers. Our younger son is a sales engineer in New Jersey, and his wife is a physics and chemistry teacher who's working on a biomedical engineering degree. And they're all fascinating and very different, and we wish we could see them more often. I think, yeah, the only drawback, if there is a drawback at all to living in Paducah, is that it's very difficult to get from Paducah to Massachusetts and New Jersey.
Or to do that easily.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Anything else we need to know as we wrap up our time here together?
Just that on our sign out front, Grace has a phrase that really strikes me as describing the congregation well in many ways. It says, enter, rest, and pray. Our doors open Monday through Thursday, and then on Saturdays and Sundays, for anyone who wants to come in and just enjoy some quiet time in a very sacred and holy space. Enter, rest, and pray. I would add a fourth to that, which is act. And we are more and more becoming active in doing God's work in our world. So I invite anyone to come and join us.
Do you still do the Wednesday Eucharist?
We do, Wednesday at noon. Another half an hour service without music, very intimate communion experience. And a 8 o'clock on Tuesday mornings, we have a centering prayer group that meets as well. So I've just come from that this morning, actually.
So many rich offerings at Grace, and it's exciting to hear about all the ways that the Spirit's moved, particularly in the time that you've been here serving. Thank you, Reverend Elizabeth T. Wade. Libby, thank you for joining us. Gregory, good to be with you. Thank you for joining us today on Reflections. We invite you with Paducah Cooperative Ministry to do God's work with human hands. Shalom.
Shalom.